These traps are outside this conference hall right here. These traps are in your home, they're in your office, they're in your car. So I want to point these traps out so that you don't accidentally step in them and then get yourself derailed and go back to making poor choices. So these are the 4 traps that we're all faced with. The first thing is this. In the moment that you're making the decision, the consequences or the result or the outcome are absolutely invisible. And this is why people get faked out. Now I could change your choice structure like this if I had the ability to take the space-time continuum and collapse it. Which means you're making this choice right now, that choice stretched out over 10, 15, 20 years. If I could collapse it, you would make a different choice, I promise. For instance, let's say at lunch you did pick the hamburger and fries. And I took the space-time continuum of that choice and I showed it to you now, and your gut explodes, your heart explodes in your chest, and you drop to the ground in a heart attack. Would you lose the taste of hamburger pretty quickly? Well, what if you woke up the next morning like this? How do you get like that? Well, it's one hamburger bite at a time, over time. Or let's just say that, you know, you're out with your girlfriends and you don't smoke, but you're having a good time, and they're like, hey, just try this. And you're like, you know, we're having a good time, I'll try it. And you breathe it in, you finish the cigarette, and you're like, wow, you know what's funny is I actually feel better after smoking a cigarette than I did before. Maybe it's the first time you breathe deeply in a long time, right? But what if I could take the space-time continuum and collapse it, and the next morning you woke up like this? Or let's take a look at this young man, all right? So he tries his first cigarette. He's getting all this positive affirmation. His buddies think he's cool. He's a rebel. He's doing it behind the school and all the rest of this. I mean, it looks like a young James Dean, right? But what if I could take the space-time continuum, show him his future self, and have him talk to him right now? What would he tell his future self? Put it down. But you see, all along the way, it didn't look like it was having that big of an effect on his life. It's not till the very end that we see the dramatic impact of those small little choices. For instance, now I'm from San Diego. We just had a very situation happen. This man right here, Jesus, his name escapes me.
Tony Gwynn!
Was drafted in 1981, third pick in Major League Baseball. And he played for the San Diego Padres for 20 years straight. One team. He's only one of 2 players that ever did that, and had an illustrious career. During his playing years, he started doing chewed tobacco that he put in the right side of his cheek. And he ended up, for 20 years, it had no consequence to him whatsoever. Didn't notice the impact of it at all. That's what I'm telling you. During the span, you noticed nothing. He even finished and with legendary status, inducted into the Hall of Fame with Cal Ripken, unanimous decision, one of the greatest hitters to ever play the game of baseball. And then in 2010, and then he went on to coach baseball for his alma mater for 12 more years. All along the time doing this chewed tobacco, having no impact on him whatsoever. And then in 2010, he was diagnosed with lymphomic or salivary gland cancer. And they had to remove the tumor. He lost the ability to even move the right side of his face, blink his eye, and the rest of it. This was one of the last known photos of him. And just this week, at age 54, he died. Now, all along the way, you didn't see the impact of that choice. It wasn't until the last 4 years where it went like that you saw the results. Let's say you promised to make a few prospecting calls every single day, and you're like, today I got a headache, I got to pick up the kids, I got to get dinner started. I'll make up for it tomorrow. And we call on the Donald, you're fired from Beachbody, and your house goes up on the chopping blocks. Or let's say you're in the middle of an argument, you're like, I know we promised we'd never go to bed angry, but I just can't deal with this tonight. We'll talk about it in the morning, and you go sleep in the guest bedroom, and the next morning you wake up to divorce papers, and you've got to look your little girl in the eye and explain why you couldn't make a different choice. You see, all the choices we make have, to put into another terms, a butterfly effect in your life. You guys know what the butterfly effect is, right? Butterfly flaps its wings in one area, and then a tsunami happens on the other side of the planet. Same thing happens in your life. A little butterfly choice of a flap of a wing happens over here, and 10, 15, 20 years down the road, there's a tsunami in your life. Positive or negative. So the first thing I need to tell you about this trap is, while you are going along, you have to be patient. When you start making positive choices, you will not see the evidence of a positive result at all for a very, very long time. Just have patience. Here's trap number 2. Subtle and deceptive. You won't even notice that you're going in a different direction. For instance, let's say that we took a plane and we're taking it from LAX to LaGuardia. And when it's on the tarmac, its nose is pointed directly at LaGuardia, okay? And it's only off by 1 degree. That's from here to here. See that? From here to here. See that? Yeah. In other words, not much. By the time it gets all the way across the country, it'll end up 2 states away, 150 miles off of its intended course. This is what happens in people's lives. They get 10, 15 years down the road and then they go, what happened? How did I get so fat? How did I end up divorced? This is the person I call the love of my life. How did I end up bankrupt? I don't remember making any colossal mistakes. So you see, you might not have. You might have only been 1 degree off, 1 degree. And that 1 degree traveled over 10, 15, 20 years, and you're 150 miles off of your intended course. So just like a plane, at the nose it has a gyroscope in order to keep itself on track. So if weathered, rerouted traffic patterns, it's constantly locking back onto its intended target. So you literally can fly at 3,000 miles across the country and it can hit the exact runway it was intended to hit, no matter what happens in between. You see, you need a gyroscope for your life too, so that no matter what happens along the journey, you can hit your intended target. But I warn you, life on the ground looks a little bit more like this. A double black diamond ski run. And you're at the top, and your intended target is that chair in front of the cozy fire with a warm cup of hot cocoa. And if you just go straight at it, what's going to happen? Yeah, it's going to get ugly, right? So what happens is you start along your journey, and then you get hit by a mogul, and it pushes you off to the right. Now, most people just ski right off the damn mountain. What you're going to do is adjust, make a turn, and you're going to be going along, you get hit by another mogul, and you're going to adjust. And you're going to get hit by another mogul. If you notice the trajectory, look at the trajectory. Notice that you are off track more than you're on track. But you could still end up in the exact chair in front of the fire, cup of hot cocoa in your left hand. How? By getting back on track. The only difference is how long it takes for you to get there. Is by how much time you spend off track. Because the time off track and the time to get back on track are time that are lost. And so that's how it ends up working out on the ground. Here's number 3. This is a big one. We want it, and we want it now. We've become very impatient, and we're constantly trying to pleasure ourselves at every moment. So here's what it looks like. Let's say that you're presented with a choice. At the end of a nice meal, you can have warm, grandma-made chocolate cake or a glass of water. That's your choice. Now, what do you get if you choose the warm chocolate cake? What do you get? Joy. Joy is what you get. An oral sensation like none other. That's what you get. Now, what do you get if you choose the glass of water? Buckets. That right there is the greatest challenge that you will ever face your whole life long. And that is, when you make a poor choice, you're rewarded. When you make a good choice, you get nothing. And that will be the challenge that you will be faced with all day, every single day. And we come by this desire to pleasure ourselves very early in life. You see, all day we're walking through a minefield of solicitations on our desire to immediately gratify ourselves. And it requires you having this steadfast will of control, this self-control in order to sustain your intended positive choice structure. Here's the great paradox that you're faced with. What gives you short-term pleasure? The chocolate cake? Saying, no, I don't want to deal with this right now, and walking out of the room, right? Going home instead of working out. creates long-term pain. On the other side of the equation, short-term pain, making the phone call, going to the meeting, creates long-term pleasure. My mentor, Jim Rohn, put it this way. He said, in life, you will suffer one of two pains. Right there's great wisdom. You have to hear it. In life, you will... Yeah, stop trying to avoid that deal. You will suffer. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. You get to pick your suffering. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And as he said, the pain of discipline weighs ounces. Picking up the phone, going to the meeting, saying you're sorry. However, the pain of regret weighs tons. Divorce, bankruptcy, headache, heartache, lost and estranged relationships. So as you are going through this minefield of solicitations on your weakest part of your nature, you have to keep these things in mind. As Oprah said to me, I said, so what are some of the ways that you're working to try to change the course for you? She says, the hardest thing is that if I make a poor choice, I'm gratified. If I make a good choice, I get nothing. And so I had to decide, what can I get if I make a good choice? She says, I decided that if I made a good choice, it's a miracle. I'm going to make a miracle. She says, because if I don't choose the chocolate cake, it's a miracle! And at least I can say, instead of the chocolate cake, I'm choosing a miracle. And she says, all I'm trying to do throughout the day is to be a miracle maker. And at the end of the day, I count up how many times today did I make a miracle. Which for her was a positive choice that gave her no physical or emotional or psychological reward. She's giving her the emotional and psychological reward of a miracle. So I pass that advice on to you because I think it's very helpful. The last trap, and this is what it is. What's easy to do, and everything I've told you here is easy, is also easy not to. It trips people up. Because it's so easy, they disregard it. They think, oh, well, it can't be that easy, so I'm going to go over here and chase these more complicated and fanciful answers. You see, it's easy to eat an apple a day. It's easy to walk around the block for your good health. It's easy to say you're sorry, pick up the phone and make calls, write thank you letters, drink 10 glasses of water a day. All those things are easy, but they're also easy not to do. And that's what gets neglected. Neglecting the easy things is what separates. So what follows choices? When you ultimately decide to do something different, what has to happen after that? So you can't just sit on your couch saying, I'm making a different choice, I'm making a different choice. You have to get up off the damn couch, go out the front door, and make something happen. So behavior is the next line of code in the operating system. The biggest problem with behavior is this. 95% of our behavior is totally and completely unconscious, which means we're not making a decision about it at all.